Ladies and gentlemen, this Power Perspective is sponsored by Grand Valley State University. Please welcome Vice President of Strategic Investments for the Quicken Loans Community Foundation, Laura Granneman.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored to be part of the day. You know, as the philanthropic arm of the Quicken Loans family of companies, the Quicken Loans Community Fund has a deep understanding of the connection between home equity and community stability. And to me, there's a bit of a poetic irony to the fact that the nation's largest mortgage lender is headquartered here in the city where we have such housing instability. Since 2005, 135,000 Detroit properties have entered a tax foreclosure auction. To put that number in perspective, that's essentially the size of Chattanooga, Tennessee. 1 in 3 Detroit properties have been foreclosed upon for non-payment of taxes since 2005. And despite all of the emphasis that we have today on a changing downtown, that's about 90 times the number of people who have moved downtown in the last 10 years. We know that there is an 86% correlation between tax foreclosure and blight. But it's not just blight that tax foreclosure creates. With each foreclosure comes a child who has to move in the middle of the year, or a generational home that's lost for an average of $3,000. Plus, then you have fire, police, and demolition costs further down the line. So, in every single case, tax foreclosure has ripple effects. I have a team member who I think is here today. His name is Alex Alsop, and he is very passionate about this issue. He has a habit of going on Google Street View imagery and looking at prior photos online and pulling up these correlations. And I think this really shows the real physical manifestations of the impact that tax foreclosure has on human lives. Here's Chelsea Ave in 2009 and again in 2018. And here, Exeter Street in 2009 and again in 2018. And again, 28th Ave, in 2009 and again in 2018. We know the city of Detroit was built for 2 million people. And I don't think I have to tell anyone in this room that a lot of people left. And that left those who stayed with a huge property tax burden. Today we have one of the highest municipal property tax rates in the country. And on top of that, we have a long history of home ownership in this city, which is a great thing. But it means that in 2008, when values crashed and jobs were lost, a lot of homeowners didn't have a mortgage. Instead, they had large property tax bills. Often those bills were based on pre-2008 assessments. Now, the city of Detroit has done a great job of reassessing properties, but you can understand how these systems and structures would build and create huge numbers of property tax foreclosures. So, today, we've gotten a lot better at diverting properties from tax auctions. But what we haven't gotten better at is actually addressing the root cause of the problem. And we know this because today we have the same number of property tax delinquencies, people who are behind on their property taxes, as we did 5 years ago, 60,000. 60,000 delinquent homes in the city of Detroit. That means tens of thousands of Detroit residents stuck in a chronic state of tax delinquency. If we don't solve this problem, we'll essentially be continuing to build in a city on a foundation of quicksand. As I've talked with housing experts from all around the country, San Francisco, DC, Charlotte, and beyond, they have said a pretty consistent message, which is that they wish that in their city, they would have the opportunity to wind back the clock to a time before housing demand really skyrocketed in their city, so that they could have an opportunity to build equitable infrastructure that would allow for equal access to quality housing. Well, today in Detroit, we have that opportunity. And if we're going to take advantage of it, we absolutely must disrupt this cycle of tax foreclosure. So, I promise I'm not just here to depress you with big, scary statistics. I actually do want to propose a couple of steps forward. First, we absolutely must continuously reach out to everyone who is vulnerable to this problem. At the Quicken Loans Community Fund, we've started a program called Neighbor to Neighbor, where we've worked with 35 community groups from across the city. We hired 400 Detroit residents, and we literally went to every door, knocked on the door, and talked to as many people as we could possibly find. And through this process, we found some really surprising statistics. First of all, 75% of homeowners who are behind on their property taxes should not have been paying their property taxes at all due to their income and household size. So that leads me to my second conclusion, which is that it's clearly not good enough to just let our property owners and our tenants know about tools that exist. Instead, we must make sure that these tools are easily accessible. That means changing the way that we talk about property tax exemptions and foreclosures and property tax assessments. The city has recently implemented monthly property tax payment programs, so that's going to be really a game changer in Detroit. Now, lastly, we must make sure that we're working early and often with tenants. Tenants make up 45% of the people that we see who are behind on property taxes, and they are not responsible for paying their taxes at all. Most of these tenants are completely unaware of the fact that their landlord isn't paying their property taxes on time. So we have to make sure that we're reaching out to them consistently. Through the Quicken Loans Community Fund, in partnership with the City of Detroit and United Community Housing Coalition, we've started a program called Make It Home, where we've worked with hundreds of tenants from across the city to make sure that they have the first right to purchase their property before the tax foreclosure auction. That basically means that for between $3,000 and $6,000, these tenants are able to become homeowners and have a real stake in our city. Thank you. Thank you. So you're going to hear a lot more about property tax foreclosure in the next several months. And I know it's a complex issue, and I barely scratched the surface today, but I implore you to engage in this conversation. It's incredibly important. Fixing policies surrounding our property tax foreclosure issues in the city is a clear way to make sure that our residents most vulnerable to displacement aren't left behind as we continue to invest in our city and region. I know we all have a vision here today. That's why we came together. And if we're going to make sure that that vision includes inclusivity, we must fix these policies now. Thank you.